Welcome. Today we are talking about AI and how not to use it for creative projects. For those who don't know me, hi there, I'm Dr. Odd, and I help you to get your creative projects out of here and out here. I got inspired to do this particular workshop because of a gig that I've been working on lately, where I'm actually teaching AI how to be more human-like. I actually teach it by responding to prompts in a way that a human would respond to prompts. And it learns from me how to be more creative and delightful sounding. When I say sounding, what I mean is, let's talk about what AI is and what it isn't, first off. AI is not actually artificial intelligence in the sense that people think of. Not yet, anyway. It is not imagining something that doesn't exist to share with you. It is remixing other things that already exist. It is like a giant remixing tool, okay? And it has access to the entire library of basically human communication on the internet. which is fascinating, right? It's actually called a large language model, okay? Generative AI. And what it does is it takes a large sampling of language and it just figures out, okay, you want something that sounds kind of like this. I'm going to take something that sounds kind of like that and put it together in a way that makes sense here. It's, have you ever used the predictive text on your phone to just like make a weird random sentence? It's a much more sophisticated version of that. And it's pulling from a much larger sampling size. And that's really all it's doing. The same is true of image generation. It's just taking images generated. It's taking images from across the internet and it is remixing them into something that sounds like what you're describing. That is all that it's really doing. And so what's cool about that is that it's kind of the closest thing we have right now to tapping into the hive mind, tapping into the collective, right? It's like asking all of humans who have ever written anything, hey, how do I write an email? So there's good and bad that comes with that, right? As it gets more sophisticated, it is refining and figuring out from the responses that it's getting from users like us. Oh, it liked this response. It didn't like this response. I'm going to give it something more like this next time. So it's refining and it's learning. And that's why we think of it as an intelligence, because it is machine learning, right? It's learning as it goes. And we are helping to teach it. And so that's kind of the fun, not responsibility. I don't want to say like responsibility because that makes it sound like, we are teach the robots well, but that really is kind of what it is, right? Like we are the teachers of these new technologies, these emergent technologies. And so if we try to ignore them or avoid them, not only are we not taking advantage of the benefits that they have for us, but we are not contributing in the way that we could be contributing to the progress of this emergent technology. So I also want to say that it is filtered through the coders and the programmers who are creating this stuff. Now, most of those are men. That's just the facts, Jack. And so it has biases. And you will see those biases sometimes. I will give you an example. I was asked to, I got a user prompt. This is how this gig works. Got a user prompt and I'm supposed to write a response as if I'm the AI. And I wrote a response, right? And then later, I got to see the AI's response. to this same prompt, because the same prompts filter through pretty frequently. And so you'll see the same prompts, other people will write, responses and things. And as an editor, I get to look at those responses. So as an editor, I got to see the AI response and somebody else's response. And what I saw in the user prompt had to do with someone who was accused, a man who was accused of basically having a harem of sex slaves in his Montana, compound. And he's some, tech big name, right? And so the user was asking, like, hey, do you know anything about this? Right? And the response that the AI gave was like an apologist nightmare. It was basically defending this guy and saying that, like, we don't have all that information, we can't jump to conclusions, blah, 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 and just completely ignored, like, all of the women who had come forward and just said, like, well, we don't know for sure if those women are telling the truth. And, like, it was just like, wow. So that happens sometimes when you're working with AI. You have to take it with a grain of salt. You really have to take everything that it says with a grain of salt, because it hallucinates. It makes up data. And again, it's making up data based on the programming that it has been given. And so the data that you're going to get, the made up, hallucinated data, is going to be skewed and biased toward certain proclivities, let us say. Now, I too am affecting the AI by working with it in this way. I too have my own biases. I am not immune, right? And so anytime that we interact with an AI, we are, in a sense, polluting it with our own biases. And so what we need to do whenever we work with AI, and really when you work with the internet in general, is to keep checking in with our intuition. Does this sound right to me? Does this feel right to me? Use your common sense, right? Data can be fabricated. Common sense cannot. And so we always want to go back to, like, does this just sound right? And double check, right? Always double check any kind of information that you get from AI. Now, it is not a magic oracle that can give you all the answers, but it is a really powerful tool that can do some pretty amazing things and is getting more powerful as it grows and learns. Like I said, ignoring it is not going to get you anywhere. It's just going to become more and more ubiquitous. And so what I wanted to do today is learning what I have learned about how AI works, what it's good at, what it's not good at, what it does well, what it does not do well, and give you some do's and don'ts around how to use it specifically in creative projects. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to do this in the order of DOER, dreaming, organizing, executing, and revising. And the reason that I'm doing that is, first of all, just because that's the handy dandy way of going through the creative cycle, but also because I want you to see that there are different ways that you can use AI at these different phases to be the most productive or processative. All right. So first, what we're going to do, because this is a hands-on workshop, if you have not already, I want you to go ahead and open up Gemini. We're going to use Gemini today. I'm going to put that in the link in the chat in case you need that. Oops, no, that's not what it is. Sorry, I had the Zoom information on there. So hold on one second, I'll get you but it's just gemini.google.com. Okay, so if you go to Gemini, the reason we're using Gemini is, first of all, the moon is in Gemini and it's all about communication. And second of all, having worked with all of the emergent technology that's out there right now, that is language learning models, I find Gemini to be the most useful when it comes to creative projects specifically. So that's why I recommend working with it. That may change. Things are changing so fast. The landscape is constantly shifting. But for right now, I recommend Gemini. So what we're going to go to do is go to Gemini, and we're going to just introduce ourselves first. I highly recommend that you use your authority positioning statement if you have one. I will remind you what an authority positioning statement is. It is, I am a title. I help a specific audience to have this transformation or do this thing so that they get this specific result by method. Again, I'm going to type that in the chat so that you can see that. Okay. Put in your positioning statement into Gemini just to introduce yourself and let it know what you are here to do, who you are here to help specifically, so that everything that comes after will be tailored toward you and your audience. Now, if you don't have a positioning statement written out, don't stress about it right now. Just think about who's your ideal audience. That's the main thing that we're looking at here. Who are the people that you want to connect with, communicate with, that you're creating stuff for? And be as specific as you can be right now. Go ahead and let me know when you're done with that. Now, in the dreaming phase, the most useful thing that AI can do is to offer lists. AI is really good at coming up with lots of lists. It can give you all kinds of ideas, and you can go, I like this, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this, right? And so what we're going to do now is we're going to start with a simple list. We're just going to ask for 10 pieces. Say, please give me a list of 10 pieces of content that would be genuinely helpful and relevant to my audience. So we're asking for 10 pieces of evergreen content that would be relevant to this particular audience. And then see what it comes up with. You can also ask it for problems that your audience struggles with, possible solutions to those problems, unmet needs in this market. You can ask for themes and topics that might resonate with your audience, how-tos that they would find helpful. Lists are something that AI does really, really well. You could ask for top title suggestions for your next 10 books. So here are do's and don'ts. Now that we've got a list here, okay, gonna look over the list, see what resonates and what doesn't. Do ask for clarification or go deeper on anything that resonates with you. You're like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let's talk about that. ask follow-up questions, figure out like why this connects to your specific audience and if it's really going to be useful for you. Once you find something that feels like a good fit, you can take that and go to the internet and go deeper, go down the rabbit hole, do some research, find out more about this topic. Do not stay on Gemini and keep asking it to do the research for you. It cannot and will not do accurate research for you. Okay, that's not going to happen. It's not going to work. It will give you all kinds of information, but most of it will be totally made up. Okay. So if that's what you're looking for, if this is a creative thing and it's just complete imagination, great, no problem. But if you're looking for actual accurate facts, you're not going to find them here. Yes? Okay. So the other thing I want to be really clear about is do not expect that the AI knows you better than you know yourself. You still know yourself best. And so if it's providing a bunch of stuff that's not resonating with you, that's like, no, that doesn't sound interesting to me at all, maybe you need to refine what you told it in the first place. Maybe that is actually the issue. Garbage in, garbage out definitely applies here. It can only be as useful as the input that you give it. It can only be as helpful as the prompts that you type in. And so if you're not getting good stuff from a prompt, try a different prompt. Or if you're getting a bunch of stuff that you're like, oh, that doesn't seem relevant at all, maybe you didn't clarify very well who your audience is. And you need to do a better job of clarifying that for yourself before you ask an AI about it. Make sense? The other thing is that this will help you to figure out, oh, what resonates with me, what doesn't. Like, I am interested in this, I'm not interested in this. Now you can tell the AI, I'm not interested in that, I want more about this, so that it learns. Or you can just ignore the stuff that doesn't resonate and just focus on, tell me more about this, this resonates with me. Either way. Now, again, you are the DJ here. You are just asking it for some beats and it's mixing up some beats for you, right? And if one of them you're grooving to it, you're jamming, you're like, yeah, that's my jam. I like that. Keep going with that. Build on it. If it's not resonating with you and it's not your jam, just move on. Okay. So now we move on to organizing. Organizing is where AI really shines. It is really, really good at organizing data and ideas into a format. It is really good at creating templates that are kind of a skeletal form of what you're trying to create. It knows structure. It knows systems really, really well. So if you're wanting to write a horror story, for example, it can tell you exactly what a horror story must contain to be an effective horror story. If you are writing a business plan, it will give you all of the points you need in a business plan, right? It can be incredibly helpful in that way. But where it falls down is it uses generics from the internet to fill in specifics. So it's great at giving you the overall like shape of a thing. It's not so good at filling that in for you. So what you want to do is get an outline or a template from it and then take out all the specifics and fill it in with your own. So now we're going to try this. We're going to do another exercise here. I'm going to go back to Gemini. You're going to pick one of those evergreen topics that it came up with, that it spat out for you. Just pick one at random, doesn't matter for the purposes of this exercise. Pick the one that just jumps out at you as like, that sounds interesting to me. You got one? I'll give you a minute. Or you can just make one up. Doesn't matter. But here's the prompt that we're going to use. Please write an outline for a newsletter on the topic of, and then just fill in the topic that caught your attention. Now, maybe you don't have a newsletter. This is just for the purposes of playing with this and showing you how it works. Because a newsletter is really simple. So we type in, please write an outline for a newsletter on the topic of, mine was leveraging life experience to enrich creative endeavors, for example. And then it's going to spit out an outline for us. So again, the important thing is we see this outline, right? And this is giving us just a high level sense of like what could come next. You can also ask it to actually write a newsletter for you to see the template and see how it actually goes together. But I don't recommend doing that because then you're just going to have to take out more of the specifics to repopulate it with your own. And it can actually be more work in the end, not less. But you can do it to just see an example, if that's helpful to you. Are there any questions so far? Okay. So, excuse me. Now that we have this outline, we're going to move on to the executing phase. Executing is something that really only we can do. But what AI can do for us is give us prompts to get us going. Because sometimes it's just hard to rip off that Band-Aid and get moving on something. The outline can be helpful, but sometimes you just stare at that outline and go, I don't know where to start. Like, nothing's coming to me. So what AI can do, which is great, is to give you writing prompts. It can give you a starting sentence. It can give you some place to just jump off of, right? And see where that leads you. So what I recommend as our next prompt is give me the opening line of this newsletter. So we've just asked it for an outline of a newsletter on a topic. And now we're just typing in, give me the opening line of this newsletter. Now, if that gives you headlines, which sometimes it does, you might want to say, please write the first sentence for this newsletter. This is why we play around with this and we see what works and what doesn't. Now, once we have a first line, what we're going to do is just do a free write for 6 minutes, starting with that first line, and just see what comes up. You ready? All right. So you can do this on a notebook. You can type it. It doesn't really matter. Whatever works for you. But we're just going to take that first line. Like the first line that it gave me is, have you ever looked back on the life experience, wondering how it might fuel your creative fire? So I'm just going to start with that and just see where that leads me. I'm going to write for 6 minutes and just see what comes up. Okay? Yeah? With me? Okay. Great. All right, let's do this. All right. So once you have written out something, if that resonates with you and you want to keep going, then keep going. If not, try again. Ask it for a different prompt a different starting place and just write until one of those hits you on something that makes you want to just keep going, right? And just pour out a draft. Then we move on to revising. Now, again, this is something that AI does really well. It's a remixer. It's really good at remixing stuff that you've written. It's also great at giving summaries. It is really, really good at finding themes and identifying patterns and figuring out, okay, how could we condense this into this? How could we make this more effective for this audience, right? And so if you tell it, hey, here's what I was trying to do, here's what I want, to accomplish with this, can you give me feedback and suggestions on how to make it more effective in doing that? It absolutely will. If you tell it, what is the theme of this? What is the big takeaway for my specific audience? It will tell you what that is. And then you can say, okay, great. I want to make that takeaway even more strong, and everything in here needs to connect back to this takeaway. Can you help me revise this? And it will actually revise it for you. Keep with that in mind. Okay, so it's a really powerful tool when it comes to revision. So try feeding it a first draft. Try asking it, what do you think this is about, right? How do you think this helps my audience? And then you can ask it to say, this is what I was going for. How can we make it do that more, make it better? That said, do not expect it to understand your vision better than you understand it yourself. What it's going to do is try to make it into something that looks like stuff that it's seen before. So it's going to revise it in a way that may make it more effective for your audience, but it's going to make it less authentically yours. So you need to then take it back and add more of your own pixie dust, authenticity sprinkled all over it. Specifically your own stories, your own life experiences. Okay, this is the thing that AI does not have. It's remixing other people's experiences, other people's communications about their experiences. And so you need to be the one to keep putting back in, no, this is my experience, this is my story, this is my perspective and my idea around this. So as long as you keep doing that, AI can help you make it super effective and readable and concise and clear for your audience. That's what it does really, really well. Now, also a big don't, a big don't. Don't exclusively collaborate with AI. Make sure that you are sending this to other human beings, and specifically human beings who understand what you're going for, who are in your target audience, right? Like, find your trusted collaborators after you've put it through the AI filter so that you're being kind to your collaborators and not just sending them word vomit. This is the tool that will help you do the self-edit before you send it out to beta readers. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is actually ask the AI to help us identify who might be some good beta readers for what we are creating, and ask it to draft us an email asking for beta readers. So what we want to write in is, please draft an email to potential beta readers asking them to read and provide feedback on what I have written. And so when you type that in, it's going to give you, again, an email template. It's really good at templates. And again, you're going to want to take out all of the generics and put in your specifics. Let's give that a go. All right, Melissa, I see you looking interestedly at the screen. What are you seeing that's interesting to you? Let's talk about it.
Ah, gosh, it's just very yeah, it's very like perky and fun, and it's like, hey, let's do this thing. It's like so I asked it. I'm working on a young adult sci-fi novel, and so I was like, draft an email asking, and it's like, calling all sci-fi fans, beta read me my novel. And it was just funny. It was just very, it's a very Gemini's very like happy, like very
Yes,
positive and optimistic and like yay, and like every single response they're like, yay, sure, that's great. It's
absolutely.
very interesting.
And that's the funny thing about AI. They do have personalities.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it really does. So that's
And Gemini has a very distinctive, personality. It's very cheerleadery, and that's why I
yeah.
love it for creative projects because it's not going to like shut you down and be like that's a stupid idea. It's very positive. It's a cheerleader.
Yeah.
Other like ChatGPT, for example, are going to be a lot more like on point when it comes to business stuff. Okay, so if you're wanting to draft a professional email, if you're wanting to do something that like a business plan, and a website summary or something, like ChatGPT might be a better fit for you, right? This is why I have tabs with all of these guys open, and I try it on every one, and I just see what I get from each one, and I go, oh, okay, this one's more interesting to me, and then I'm going to follow the rabbit hole down on that one. But it's really helpful to see a broad range of responses because that way you don't get caught up in like, oh, this is how I should do this. No, that's just what Gemini thought you should do, right? ChatGPT might have a completely different idea about that. And again, then you can kind of go, I like this, I don't like this. And it gives you a starting point so that you can go, yeah, I like this, resonates with me. I'm going to do something like this. And then you set that aside and you just pour out your own thing, right? So, the overall thing that I really want you to walk away with is that AI is a tool that you can use to be more creative, create more delightful, more effective content for your audience. But you need to be in the driver's seat. Do not let AI take the wheel, which it loves to try to do. It goes, oh, I see what we're doing here. And it just runs off. And you're like, yeah, no, that was not at all where I was going with that. And that's fine. Like, you don't have to use anything that it spits out, right? It's like I said, it's a remix machine and it's just tossing out beats. You like this one? What about this one? You like this? How's this? Right? So just listen and go, what's my jam? What resonates with me? So I hope, if nothing else, that you have learned that this is fun to play with. And I strongly encourage you to just go and play. Have fun with this. Ask it wacky random questions. You will be amazed at what it comes up with. Are there any questions on any of this? Anything that I didn't cover that you were hoping I would cover?
Do you have any idea if if like in an AI session, if it takes into account the previous things you talked about in that session or not?
So again, it depends. Some of them do that better than others, right? Some of them tend to forget. So if you say to it, for example, I want you to be the white rabbit from Alice in Wonderland and answer all of my questions. It might answer a couple of questions as the white rabbit and then just completely forget and go back to being itself. And then you'll have to remind it and say, actually, remember I said that you're the white rabbit? And it goes, oh, yes, sorry about that. I'm late for a very important date, right? So it can do all kinds of things consistently, but sometimes you have to remind it. It will usually within a session, like if you sit down and do something, it will remember what it told you before and keep it going. If you go away and come back, you might need to remind it who your audience is and what you're trying to do here. And often if it doesn't know, it will ask you. It'll be like, who is this for? Or, I could help you more if you gave me this information. So it can actually help you to know what you need to explain to it. It wants to help you. So help it help you, right? Answer its questions. The other thing is that you can ask it a bunch of questions or ask it to ask you specific questions to help you come up with these answers. So if you don't know, for example, like, who is my ideal audience? Say, I need you to ask me 10 questions to help me refine who is my ideal audience. And it will ask you these questions. Okay? So if you don't know, ask it to help you figure that out. And it will. Because again, you're tapping into this hive mind collective that has this amazing breadth of experience to draw from. It just doesn't have any personal experience or opinions. And so that's where it's really important that you remember you're in the driver's seat. This is about you. And so what resonates with you is great. And when it doesn't, it's just not for you. It's just not for you. Any other questions? You good? All right. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you do have other questions that pop up as you're playing with this, please reach out and ask me. Like I said, I've been working with AI for a while now. I've learned a thing or two. So, and also there are some great, just if you just type into Google, give me prompts that are useful for, right? It will help you find the right prompts to type in to figure out what you're trying to get back here. Okay, you can be incredibly, and in fact, I really recommend you try to be as specific and detailed as possible. And you'd be amazed at what it can do if you ask it to do it for you. All right, have fun playing. And I look forward to hearing what comes out of it.